Welcome back to Radio Entrepreneurs, and our next guest is Michelle Taylor, founder of Women in Wealth Initiative. Welcome to Radio Entrepreneurs.
Thanks so much, Jonathan. I'm happy to be here.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you on. We talked a little bit before we came on to this segment. Tell us a little bit about your organization and what it is that you do.
So, I started off in this space as a licensed advisor and had a lot of experience working with people from all walks of life. But what I was finding is in my work with women, there was a huge disparity in their access to information and the conversations they were having. So that is where Women in Wealth was born. Now I still see clients on a personal level, one-on-one, but have now successfully launched this community and membership platform so that conversations that are critical to building wealth aren't just happening on the golf course and instead are being had amongst us for the betterment of everyone.
So it's fascinating. Congratulations to you, by the way.
Thank you.
But it is fascinating. I saw a statistic in the last week, and of course, my numbers are fuzzy, but I thought it was somewhere around 35% of people work with a financial planner. The number may be even lower than that.
It is
Um,
quite low.
and so, as you and I are talking before we started the segment, where do people get their financial, knowledge? And it's really amazing that, I think when just thinking back to my own kids when they were growing up, I think maybe one of them took a short course in finance, personal finance in high school. Touching on the basics, what is a bank account? How do you write a check? Things of that nature. But very few people, I think, in our country, and perhaps across the board, really get any sort of formal education in finance and even the basic blocking and tackling. How do you do things? Um,
Sure.
and I would imagine, as I am reminded, actually, my son, who's in his early in his career, but in his 20s, said, they asked me to write a check. I don't have a check.
I
So
know.
what is a check?
I know.
And so, it's fascinating how, we've got this evolution and technology and changing different platforms and crypto and, yet people don't even have a very basic knowledge and understanding. So how do you tackle that? And is that very often the type of people that you're working with, or people that have no formal background and no formal have given no formal education in how to run their personal lives?
Yes, oftentimes that is the case. And you hit the nail on the head. There's very few that actually come to the table or seek out an advisor who have had some traditional schooling in this area. There's just not the conversations happening that need to be happening. We're not doing it in schools. We're certainly not talking about it around the dinner table. And that is something that I'm hoping to change because as infrequent as those conversations are happening for everyone, for women, they're happening even less frequently. So people always say, I'm not ready for a financial advisor or consultant until this invisible line is crossed. But the reality is, there is an advisor for everyone at any stage in their wealth building journey. So I always tell people the time to start was yesterday. The second best time is today because the most powerful piece of wealth building is time. And I don't need to tell you the power of compounding interest and returns is critical. Nobody saves their way to wealth. And I feel like that narrative that we've all been exposed to is that credit cards or debt is bad, saving is good, but no one's talking about what you have to do to actually build wealth and what are the conversations that we need to be having with each other as peers, as parents that will change this landscape moving forward.
Yeah, well, you've touched on so many things to unpack and obviously fascinating and challenging at the same time. I mean, I just think back in my own journey and the value of compounding. I think to your point, if you literally put $100 or whatever, $50 a month, $20 a month away into a bank account or into some investment vehicle that compounds over time and grows over time. You look back 30 years from now and you'd be surprised how many numbers you have, multiples of tens of thousands from relatively small investments over time. But I think that to your point, many people think, well, wealth planning is something that I need to do when I cross that, $1,000, $10,000, $100,000 of personal wealth. I think your point is start early. The sooner you start, the sooner you get on that journey, the more that wealth is going to build over time, and you'll be able to look at other vehicles for growing your wealth as well. That it doesn't happen strictly through getting 0.001% in a savings account. That's never going to make people wealthy.
That's right. And you asked a question earlier, where are people getting their information? Right now, we are in such a unique landscape around this where there's never been easier access to information. However, people are going to social media and hearing these little clips that they're sharing amongst themselves, and they don't know if that is an appropriate strategy for them. So it's really interesting to see where people come in and they think that they've got this figured out, but you do need to look at the big picture. And that's where working with someone that is licensed and experienced will help. And one of the really great things that I think people need to take away from this conversation is it's all about building out your personal board of advisors. I talk about this at the in the community. There is a piece of it called I've Got a Girl. And like so many of us will say, oh, I've got a guy for that. I switched the narrative a little bit, but the idea is who needs to be at your table to ensure that you are blocking and tackling from every angle, depending on the stage of life that you're in. As an entrepreneur, it is critical that we have access to capital to grow and scale our business and to be able to reinvest in our business. So, if the only advice that you're getting is to put money into a retirement account, you likely are in direct competition with what your investment strategy is based on your conversations with your CPA and then based on what you're doing to try and grow your business. So, it's very important when you're seeking out these relationships that they are in alignment with what you're trying to accomplish.
So, you touch on an interesting point. Very often, if you go to a professional, that professional will have other referrals to other professionals. And I'm not sure most people seek that out. How they find they sort of fall into their professional advisors in
Sure.
some capacity. But I think one of the challenges people have, and I don't want to put the negative spin on it, but there's a lot of people out there that aren't necessarily out for good. There's a lot of people in any industry and any profession who are not very good at what they do. Would you say that how do people vet those people? How do they vet them, ensure that they're in the right advisory situation and getting advice from people who are truly looking out for their best interests?
Well, going back to what we discussed earlier is we have access to a lot of information now. So I think that you're right. People oftentimes will ask a friend or a peer for a recommendation on something. It's really important that you do your due diligence and look into if those people are fiduciaries. The other thing that you want to understand, and this is a resource I provide to my community, I'm happy to provide it to anybody listening. You want to understand the questions that you need to be asking these professionals before you enter into a formal engagement. You want to understand how the relationship will work. And that doesn't just necessarily mean, how the communication will work, but how are they compensated? What does it look like if you want to step away from the relationship? These are all really important things to understand because oftentimes lack of understanding is where disappointment comes from. So we like to ask the tough questions in the beginning and make sure that the relationship moves smoothly. And you should never just immediately jump in with the first person you meet unless you know several people or have gotten several referrals. I always say you want to talk to a couple of people, make sure that they're qualified, licensed, they're fiduciaries, but also make sure that it feels cohesive in the conversations that you're having and that they're really listening. There is a difference between listening to respond and listening to understand. And I think, especially for women, it's really important that we are getting our points across and being heard.
It's interesting you say that. I think the other thing that I see people often do is a set it and forget it mentality, which is,
Sure.
oh, I took care of that. Yet that was a snapshot in time. And, as we know, our lives change, our situations change over time. So, just as people should be going to a doctor for an annual physical, you should be getting an annual financial wellness checkup. If you're not doing it on a consistent basis, you're probably not at peak physical or financial shape.
You are totally right. Because as your life evolves and your situation evolves, you need to maybe adjust that board of directors that's sitting around your table. For example, if you are a young professional, maybe you don't have a need for an estate planning attorney yet, but the minute you get married, start accumulating assets, having children, those are relationships that you need to start now sourcing. Additionally, think about even if you're looking at something as simple as car insurance, homeowners insurance, umbrella policies. I don't know about you, but so many people that I've talked to and myself personally, you go into one of those annual premium situations where it's one number to get you in the door. And every year there's a slow creep. And before you know it, the premium's doubled. Now, what happens is we're all busy. We don't have time to sit on the phone and shop this out. So you just keep paying it. That's a perfect opportunity to have that relationship to make sure that they're not just committed to one specific carrier, can shop it out for you and find the best fit for you and your family while spending as little as possible. These are those things that we don't want to do, that we avoid doing, that we need to have at our table to make sure we're spending our money appropriately.
Absolutely, and they can be such anxiety provoking. I mean, almost whether it's sitting in a dental chair or shopping for a new car and dealing with a car salesman. I think insurance renewals and phone providers. All those conversations are probably up there with ones that people really don't like having, but are so important. If you think about it, if your cable or phone provider has gone up 20 or 30% and you can slash that and put it towards your savings objectives, you'll be that much further ahead in the long run.
Absolutely.
Michelle, tell us a little bit about the Women in Wealth Initiative and how the network works. You talked about it being a foundation or a platform. Tell us a little bit about that.
It is. So, in my work, I have found that not everybody is in need of the same type of planning. I wanted to make sure that women in general, regardless of industry or stage of life, had somewhere to go that they could learn at their own pace. So there's a content library that is always growing where people can come in and learn the difference between an IRA and a 401k and a Roth IRA, or what is an accredited investor? How do I become one? What's private credit? I wanted people to have access to information they may not quite be ready to implement because it's something that they can strive for. So we have a content of information, and most importantly, we have a community of like-minded women who are all eager to do better than prior generations and to provide for their families and be define their own level of success and what that looks like. So building out a community, entrepreneurship is a lonely journey. For us ladies, it can sometimes feel even more so like we're on an island. So I wanted to cultivate a place where women could raise their hand, learn from each other, learn from the resources. We have bi-weekly calls where I have different experts on spanning several different industries where they have open forum to ask questions, get answers in real time. And then of course I've got a girl database where there are several women in each industry that I have personally vetted and sourced to ensure that they are doing good work. And I give my audience a list of questions to identify what a perfect relationship would look like for them and hopefully help them set up that board of directors with as much ease as possible. The membership is two-tiered, so it encourages women to get in and grow. And then ideally, if the time ever comes where they feel like they truly do need personal planning, I'm your girl.
Wonderful. Sounds like you've built yourself a fantastic foundation and a wonderful service to women and to people in general. Michelle Taylor,
Yeah.
founder of Women in Wealth Initiative. If people want to get in touch with you, learn more about your initiative, your platform, and or your services, what's the best way for them to do that?
The best way would be to go to my website, womeninwealth.co, or follow me on Instagram, and that is women_in_wealth. And for anybody listening that is interested in getting some of those free resources I mentioned, drop a DM or send us a message, comment Radio Entrepreneurs, and I'm happy to send over anything I can to be a good resource.
Fantastic. Michelle, it's been a real pleasure having you on Radio Entrepreneurs, and we wish you continued success along your entrepreneurial journey.
Thank you so much, Jonathan. It was a pleasure to be here.
And we'll be right back with another segment on Radio Entrepreneurs.